What's an educated mama?
Hello, I'm Ryan Jordan, and welcome to the Educated Mama. During this podcast, we will learn from experts, entrepreneurs, creators, and leaders who are also mothers responsible for all the things. Let's celebrate women, learn a few mom hacks, and discuss the beautiful mess of motherhood. We're all learning together, right? Today's guest is Carly Anderson, and we will be talking with her about body positivity, female empowerment, and how to raise confident kids. Carly is a former inner city elementary school teacher who spent 15 years enriching the lives of children. When she had her own daughter, she realized how challenging it was for moms to take care of themselves along with their little ones. She launched Lipgloss Crayons, started blogging, snapping photos, and created a community for women. Carly is passionate about sharing body positivity inspiration, fashion that flatters, beauty tips and tricks, and mom life hacks that actually work. She is currently living in San Diego with her musician husband and her darling daughter, Lydia. Let's meet our guest. Hi, Carly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here. I feel like I need you to intro me all the time. That was wonderful.
Well, I am so grateful to have you here today. I mean, it's so funny because, you and I met 6 or 7 years ago now.
That's funny. I was trying to calculate before we started recording, like, how long ago was it? I was like, okay, it was definitely pre-kids, right? This is how we measure everything now.
Yes. I'm like, okay, we were at church. Like, where was I in my life? What was happening? I was pregnant when I met you, and you were about to have your daughter.
I was definitely around that time frame.
Yes. But either way, we ended up, having a great community of women to bond with and grow with and go through life with. And, it was a group called Young Married. So we were pretty much all freshly married within 10 years, all about to have babies. And, I remember talking to you about what it's like to be a new mom and breastfeeding. And we take our walks around Balboa Park and just lean into each other because, it's not always the expectations you have when you are a new mom. All of a sudden things can be like, oh, wow, nobody ever talked about that part of motherhood.
So many parts, right? No, I'm so thankful for that. And it's funny because when I think about what I do now, which is basically to build a community for women, I realized that was one too. It's just so interesting because I've always been a very community-driven person, on or offline. So it totally makes sense that that's where we met.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I just would love to know, what was the catalyst? What was the moment that you were like, I need to launch Lip Gloss and Crayons? And why did you name it that? Tell me more.
It's so funny because I say all the time it was a happy accident. I had zero intentions of this even being a thing. So as you said in the intro, I was a teacher for 15 years in Los Angeles. And when I originally started my blog, the crayons was about my students. I wasn't even married at this point. I think we were engaged, and it was back in the time, for those of us that are old enough to remember this, when every couple with young kids had a family blog, and it was mostly for the grandparents, and it was like a little online scrapbook. Well, I was one of the last in my group of friends to get married and one of the last to have kids. And they all had these blogs, and I just wanted one. There was no reason, there was no business model, right? How many of you are laughing right now because you remember this? So I started a blog that was meant to be about teaching. I was going to write about how I taught my fourth graders multiplication and, classroom management techniques. That lasted for, 3 months. And then summer vacation started, and nobody wants to talk about work on vacation. So I started writing about just random things, places we went in LA, cute outfits. It was just a hobby that continued and continued and continued and turned more into a lifestyle blog once I had my daughter. But still at that point, I really didn't have any intention of ever doing this full time. For years, I said, oh, it's something I do on the side. And yes, it started to take more time. And yes, it started to kind of become an income. There were all these things, but it really was about 10 or 11 years in before this became my full-time job. And it just kind of grew on its own, which sounds silly to say, but it grew into something that I realized was a business. And then I started to take the business more seriously. And when we moved to San Diego, oh my gosh, a year and a half ago now, we decided our family was making this huge shift because we had been up in Los Angeles. And I decided to take a quote unquote sabbatical from teaching, which is hysterical in terms of timing because not long after the pandemic hit, and I am now home with my daughter who is doing virtual school. And let me tell you, I'm very glad that I am not virtually teaching and running this community and home with her. So the timing is perfect for what it turned into.
As much as you say it just kind of grew, I mean, I know you're really hardworking. I think, this probably grew bigger than you ever imagined it would grow. And I know that how hard you work. So I imagine that this took a lot of thought, creativity, and just grew into something you didn't even know would happen.
100%. I would never say I did not do any work or that it showed up on my doorstep. That I 100% worked and learned and studied and strategized. I just don't think that if you had asked me at the beginning of this, if I ever thought that I would be doing this as a job, I would have believed you. Mm-hmm. But yes, it was 100% years of learning about marketing and studying behavior trends and learning about SEO for a website and things that I clearly did not learn when I was studying elementary school education back in the day. It was definitely work, consistency. It did take a lot of time. I mean, I used to joke that I had 2 full-time jobs.
Being an influencer, right? It takes a lot of time.
The biggest part of it for me is that I always wanted this to be a community, an encouraging community for women online, not necessarily just a come look at how great I am type of space. So what I found, at least in the last few years, is a lot of that time has also been the behind the scenes stuff that most people don't see, like answering messages and doing research about articles to share that I think are important. That community building piece has turned into a huge part of it, way more than I ever realized it would, which is interesting.
Well, let's talk about your bravery. I'll never forget when you launched Just Wear the Suit. I mean, I know I'm not alone here when I am getting, done with my pasty fall winter weather and I go to Target to try on that swimsuit and I always have to grab a size that's bigger than I thought I actually wore and mismatched sizes, and I'm standing in front of the mirror and there's a moment that I'm like, God help me, and especially after having a baby,
I was going to say, you're thinking back to your 20-year-old self and and I wasn't comfortable then, but man,
I should have been, and then after you become a mother, right? There's a lot, there can be scars, there can be flab, there can be stretch marks, there can be all the things. But what I loved about you, Carly, was that you weren't concerned with any of that. You were like, I am body positive and here's what I'm putting out in the world. I would love to know the steps you took to get there. That's what I would love to know.
Well, to clarify, I was very concerned in the beginning, very concerned. So I was someone that struggled with body image my entire life. In my immediate family, my mom and my sister are beautiful women. They are both significantly smaller than I am just naturally. I also have a pretty severe thyroid condition, which caused me to struggle with sluggishness and weight gain starting from when I was 12. So this is definitely not something new for me or not something that developed after motherhood. I just never felt comfortable. And it's funny because I actually blame Instagram for this. This is something very positive that has come out of Instagram. When Lydia was, oh gosh, maybe two or three, she was definitely over 1. It was right around when Instagram stories launched, like the little videos you can watch in the circle at the top in case anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about. And it was very new. So I sort of forgot that people were on the other end watching these videos. It was new enough where I wasn't paying any attention. And it was spring and I was sitting in my car, turned off in the driveway at my house, talking to the camera. And I had always done a lot of like fashion content. I would show jeans that I liked, dresses, and I had a bunch of messages from people saying, oh, it's spring. Are you going to do bathing suits? And I was horrified. There's no way I was doing bathing suits. Bathing suits? Are you kidding me? So I recorded just an Instagram story talking about how uncomfortable that made me and how I realized that my daughter was 2 and I had worn a bathing suit 3 times in 2 years. And we live in California by the beach. Okay. I mean, that's a little ridiculous. And I jokingly said on this video, I should just take photos in a bathing suit because if I put it on the internet, it will like take its power away. Like I won't care as much anymore, right? The messages, I like forgot that I'd said this. The messages kept coming in for days and weeks. Are you going to do the bathing suit thing? Will you do the bathing suit photos? This is great. I look like you. Can you take the bathing suit photos? And I really tried to avoid it. I made it all the way till July. So this was maybe April or May, all the way till July, avoiding it, right? And I kept getting the messages, and these stories only last for 24 hours. I don't know why people still remembered this. It got to the point where I was like, you know what? This will be good for me. I'm going to do these photos one time, and then we could all move on with our lives. It's July. People will probably like the photo. This is great. You know, maybe I'll sell a couple bathing suits. Who knows? We could move on. And I took photos in the backyard of a photographer's house who was my close friend, who I knew very well. She had a pool. I thought, this is good. She's a pro. Like, she'll make me look good. I don't have to worry about seeing the outtakes. This is exactly what I need. We took the photos. I almost cried. I almost had an anxiety attack taking these photos, which is so crazy to me now to think back and realize how uncomfortable it made me. And she sent me the photos, and I didn't hate them. I didn't love them, but I didn't hate them, if that makes any sense. I kind of thought, oh, okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was. This is all right, you know, and I didn't post them for a while still. And then I had this great plan. I was going to New York for a trip with a girlfriend, and I thought, I'll just post one while I'm on the trip. I won't notice. I could just post it and be distracted all day long. This is the best thing I could possibly do. It was, to this day, the highest single day of traffic on my website that I have ever had. And then, of course, they asked for more. So I thought it was over. It was not over. And so for the first year or so, it was just me sharing bathing suits. And every time I did it, I felt a little more comfortable. I cared a little less. It got to the point where I could take the photos at the beach and I didn't have to hide in this photographer's backyard anymore. A couple of years in, actually, I feel like this might have been at a conference that I saw you at. We were at, we were at the Mom 2.0 conference in Pasadena a couple of years ago. And this was a kind of an online influencers conference, I guess is the best way to put it. It was about all things motherhood. Mm-hmm. So the focus of the conference was community and building community. And I was driving to and from my teaching job, going to this conference after work, and I kept hearing about community. And by the end of the conference, I thought, well, I want to have a community. What can I do with my community? And I thought, is it the bathing suit thing? Maybe it's the bathing suit thing. Will anybody else post bathing suit photos? I would barely post bathing suit photos. So I decided to just give it a whirl. I thought, oh, okay. What I have are influencer friends. I'm going to ask some influencer friends to do this with me so it doesn't flop. So I'm not like alone, right? So I picked a day and I said, hey, here's the deal. Post whatever you want. Just post a bathing suit. And I'm going to tell women that we want to open this community up so we could support each other. And all they have to do is use this hashtag, and it's not about me, and they can message each other, find someone that looks like them or a story that resonates with them. And it was May 15th and it went bananas. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. Years later, this hashtag community has been featured in Shape magazine, People magazine. I wrote something for the Huffington Post. Like, it is so bizarre to me. We won an Instagram award at that same conference a year later, 2 years later. And it's the women that are involved. It's not even me anymore. What I realized is I can go offline for 2 weeks and these women are still talking to each other. It's not me at all. And I think it's just, it's a pain point for women. It really is. This is something that society has taught us we have to look a certain way to feel comfortable in a bathing suit. A bathing suit is just a piece of clothing. Like it's just a piece of clothing. And we put so much around it that we miss the joy of things like being at the beach with our kids, being on vacation with our friends, participating in our child's first swimming lesson. It's like somehow this piece of clothing is taking joyful moments away from us. And that was kind of my whole point, is the more you just talk about it and the more you're just throwing these photos up on the internet, you're taking that power away and making it not as big of a deal anymore. So here we are many years later.
It's beautiful.
And now I own like 87 bathing suits.
Carly, it's so inspiring because so many women wouldn't have just put up the suit, right? And just wear the suit. I remember you inspired me, and I thought to myself, I haven't swam enough with my kids, and I am not a person who has deep-seated body issues. But for some reason, after I had a baby, there was something about putting on a swimsuit and just, maybe because I had a C-section and I felt like different. And so I remember hashtag just wear the suit. And I remember tagging you, and I was like, if Carly can do this, I can do this too. Like, if one other person can do this, that's okay. And I felt shy and weird about it. And now it just came to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm not sacrificing playing with my kids because I'm worried about cellulite or stretch marks. Like, I'm not worried about it anymore. You get to a point where you just stop caring what other people think, because the joy is so much more important to play with your kids. And that's the memories I want to build. I don't want to build memories with my kids of them wondering, gosh, mom doesn't swim with me, or mom doesn't build sandcastles with me, or mom is never in a swimsuit. I'm in my backyard or at the beach now running through the water, and I don't care what anyone says, because at the end of the day, I don't think anyone would really ever say anything to me. Right?
First of all, there are so many things that I realized in kind of building this community. One is that the only person that cares is you. The only person that cares about what your thighs look like is you. No one else is paying an ounce of attention. The other thing I realized is the level of insecurity we have has nothing to do with our appearance. The amount of women, when I scroll this hashtag and look at these women and think, why is she insecure? What? It blows my mind how we see ourselves versus how other people see us. If you look, this hashtag is filled with women of every shape and size. It has nothing to do with external appearance. And I think for me, that has been so validating to realize this is about my own perception, not about how anybody else sees me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. And I want to talk about the photos while you're scrolling, right? I've heard women say, or in mom communities say, like, oh, this community of women who's posting all the time can make me feel bad about myself, or I feel like all these photoshopped photos are not reality. And so I would love to just touch upon that. I mean, you do this for a living. I don't personally feel that way. It's motivational and fun for me, but I know there is a community of women that feels this way. So talk to me about Photoshop and photos, because I think I read somewhere that you do not Photoshop.
I do not Photoshop. I do not Photoshop photos. I use Photoshop to change the exposure on photos if they are under and overexposed. So if anyone listening is familiar with photo editing, I do change the exposure. That has nothing to do with your appearance of your body or your face. That has to do with light balance. So to be clear, I do that. The internet is a wild and greatly varied place, right? There are women who choose to do all the Photoshop on their photos and Facetune themselves into oblivion. That is their right to do. I'm going to acknowledge that we all have a right to make our own decisions. It is not something that I want to encourage or participate in on the internet. I personally feel as not only as someone who takes in content myself, but as someone who worked with young girls and saw when you have these 4th and 5th graders also start to take in content on the internet. I want women and young girls to be presented with a realistic view of what women look like. I want them to know that I'm 41 years old and I have wrinkles on my face. That's what 41-year-olds look like. You know, I mean, that's unless they are altering it in some way, which yet again is their right to do. It is not my personal choice. I want these girls to know that women's bodies come in all shapes and sizes and that that is okay. That I think my biggest suggestion to women is you should not be taking in content that makes you feel insecure or uncomfortable. I regularly unfollow people on Instagram. If it does not serve me, I do not need to take in your content. The great thing is that I have control over what I see. If somebody makes you feel less than, unfollow them. It's okay. Please protect your space. I mean, you know, yes, I think that there is the idea that there's this Instagram perfect reality, and you see women in perfect homes with quote unquote perfect bodies and perfect children, perfect husbands and perfect hair and perfect fill in the blank, whatever the other thing is. And for some people, they find that to be aspirational and inspiring, and it doesn't bother them. And that is great. If that is you and you love to look at perfectly decorated homes because you're decorating your house and that's your jam right now, have at it. I know that's never going to be me. And I know that that content doesn't really serve me. So that's okay. I do encourage mothers or parents or adults who are caring for children to help facilitate who they follow, because I think something important to think about, putting on my dorky teacher hat for a minute, is that as adults, we have more of an ability to differentiate between like the internet and everyday reality. Our kids developmentally can't do that as much yet. Until about the age of 24, 25, children haven't finished developing like that front cortex in their brains, which leads to judgment, the ability to kind of determine right from wrong. Kids don't understand that a 20-year-old with a filter on their face doesn't look like that in real life, if that makes sense. So if your children have social media, side note, they probably shouldn't until they're at least 13, which is the minimum user age for every social platform. Just put that out there. If they do, please be involved in who they follow and the type of content that they're taking in, because our kids are very impressionable. And I think it's important to have discussions about that. Hey, do you think her face really looks like that? Does anybody's face really look like that? Probably not. So
we do. People forget we do have a choice of who we want to follow. So if something's not resonating with you, just unfollow, mute. There are options for that. And so it's interesting when I hear people complain about people on the internet. It's like, well, you chose to invite them into your life, but they will say, well, they have a responsibility to show up a certain way. And at the end of the day, we're such diverse, complex people. And what's right for one is not right for another. And just choose to follow things that bring joy into your life or educate you or make you feel something other than angry.
Well, and I think, you know, I get it. I do feel I have a responsibility. If you're calling yourself a quote unquote influencer, in theory, you influence other people, right? I mean, that's the point.
And that's a great point. You know, when you take on the name of influencer, whatever you're influencing, you have to be responsible for. You know, so if that is your title, you know, you are an influencer or you are a micro influencer, you're influencing somebody. So think about that, right? Like you have to be conscious of the community that you're creating and the followers that you're creating. So we learned a lot about that in 2020.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
So little sidebar, let's jump over to mom hacks. So I know that mom hacks are one of your things that you love and, you know, the mom hacks that actually work. So do you have like a mom hack that you'd want to share with, you know, our listeners or viewers about that you feel good about?
I don't know if this is a mom hack necessarily, but admit to your children you've made a mistake. That's it. I mean, we all make mistakes. I think as parents, especially first-time parents, we all, myself included, feel the need to be correct or to have all the answers or to be an expert in everything. Of course, we're not experts in everything. We've never done this before, right? And even if you have, every child is different. There is something so powerful about saying to your child, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will figure it out. I lost my temper today. I am so sorry. Mom is a human just like you, and I was having a bad day and I made a mistake. What I wish I'd said to you is the following. It is okay to be vulnerable with your kids. As much as I'd like to say that I am like a licensed professional, I mess up with my own child all the time. Especially this year, I lose my temper all the time. Clinically, I know I shouldn't do that, but we're all human beings. So mom hack of the day. Be human and admit if you've messed up. It's okay. And I think what we're teaching our children more than anything else is that everybody makes a mistake. Everybody loses their temper. Everybody missteps. The world isn't over. It's okay. When you're in relationship with people, they're not perfect. You still love them and you move on and find a solution. I don't know if that counts as a hack, but
I think it is. I think a lot of beauty is in the repair when you make a mistake. I always joke with my kids, my teacher mentality is that's why pencils have erasers, because we make mistakes, and then from there. And I think it's important as parents to point out the mistakes that you make to your kids or share with them life stories. Like if they say something or make a mistake or they have a whoops, you can say, you know what, when I was little, I spilled my cup of milk at the table all the time and my dog licked it up. Or, you know what? That one time I was on vacation with my family and I forgot to use the potty before I left the house, totally peed my pants. My mom didn't care, just gave me some clean clothes. And, my son or daughter, I'll watch their face light up and go, oh, really? Or like they'll say to each other, like walking back to the playroom, well, mom did that once. So I think it's so important to point out your mistakes, even if they don't know you've made them, because it makes them know that you are human, that you aren't just this, person they've created in their mind, like this is my mom and she's not human, and that even happens with teachers too. Remember the first time you ever saw your teachers out in plain clothes or at a restaurant, like drinking a beer or something? You'd be like, oh, Mrs. Smith was drinking a Bud Light, it was like they're people. Or I saw her in jeans and Nikes. It's just, kids have this perception of older people being on a different level and not human, So I love that you made that point.
There's an entire kids book about a teacher that lives at school, by the way. I used to read it every year to my class and be like, see this? I don't do this. However, if you see me outside of school, just wave and keep walking. We don't need to have a long conversation. It's okay.
That's so funny. So I want to know, Carly, what is next for you? Are you working on any great projects right now or anything you want to share?
I am working on a eventual project. We are making some strides. I mean, I've said this is not new information. I have dreams of launching a inclusive bathing suit line. I mean, something that celebrates women, that includes women of all sizes. It is a very large undertaking, much bigger than I thought, much like starting any business, right? So now that hopefully things are turning with the pandemic that we're in, that is slowly picking up steam again. My goal is that it would be for not this summer, but next summer. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. That sounds amazing. I'll be rooting for you and following you and liking your stuff and just loving on you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I'm grateful that I still have you in my life.
Thank you, friend. I wish we were doing this in person someday.
I know. Soon. Bye, Carly. Thanks so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and you had some great aha moments. I am so passionate about empowering women and I can't thank you enough for your support. If you know an inspiring mama or you are an inspiring mama, send them our way. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday and please like, follow, and subscribe to The Educated Mama. Write a review, leave us a comment, share this podcast with your friends. I'm Ryan Jordan, founder and CEO of Educated Nannies. You got this, mama.